The ONKYO RZ50 may have been our home theater receiver of the year 2021, but may have a legitimate challenger in the Pioneer Elite VSX-LX305 AV receiver. Which will be the top dog going into 2022? Let's find out. Before we jump in today's review, let's do some good for charity, thanks to today's sponsor, Omaze. Omaze is giving you a chance to win a Los Angeles dream home worth $4.3 million. And this is more than just a 5-bedroom, 6-bathroom, 5,800 square foot modern farmhouse. It is an entertainer's paradise, complete with its own pool, spa, sports court, putting green, and movie theater. Enter between now and December 31st, and you will automatically be entered for a chance to win an Aston Martin Vantage. But if you're like Andrew, I already got a house and my dream car, so Omaze has you covered. If a house with a supercar in the garage isn't for you, you can choose the multi-million-dollar cash prize. But the best part is, this is all to help Rebuilding Together, a charity that repairs homes for veterans and people with disabilities. Rebuilding Together also works with volunteers and community leaders to improve parks, schools, community centers, and nonprofit facilities. They even help rebuild homes after natural disasters. It's a great cause, which is why we have partnered with Omaze for this video. Enter for your chance to win the Los Angeles Dream Home and support Rebuilding Together today by visiting omaze.com/Andrew Robinson via the link below. Now, back to the review. The LX305 falls right in the middle of Pioneer's elite lineup of AV receivers for 2021. It is a 9.2 channel Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, and IMAX enhanced enabled receiver that churns out 100 watts per channel into 8 ohms, albeit that is only with 2 channels driven. It's no surprise here that Pioneer does not share specs with respect to all channels driven, but it's likely not going to be 100 watts. The 305 has dual subwoofer outs, though they are not independent of one another. The Pioneer is a bit light on digital audio inputs, possessing only a single coaxial and optical audio input, though it has a number of analog audio inputs, including a moving magnet phono preamp, which is an addition I appreciate. One thing that is bound to please both hi-fi and home theater enthusiasts is the presence of DIRAC Live built in. Like the more expensive ONKYO RZ50, DIRAC Live works with the included microphone and Pioneer remote app. Unlike many other AV receivers, the 305 gives you a choice with respect to room correction. If you don't want to use DIRAC, the 305 also has Pioneer's own MCACC room correction software built in. The 305 is reported to be 8K60, 4K 120 compatible out of the box with no firmware updates needed, which we'll discuss more in just a moment. It has 6 HDMI inputs and 2 HDMI outputs. All HDMI inputs are 2.1 compliant, though inputs 1 through 3 can handle up to 40 gigabits per second, whereas inputs 4, 5, and 6 are limited to 24 gigabits per second. The 305 is compatible with most popular streaming services and even has built-in support for platforms like Spotify, Tidal, Amazon Music, and more. Of course, it also supports Bluetooth, AirPlay 2, as well as Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant. Throw in full control via the included remote or the free Pioneer remote app, and you have the 305 specs pretty much summed up. Setting up the Pioneer isn't difficult, even if this is your first AV receiver. Because it is a 9.2 channel receiver, you can power up to a 5.2.4 Dolby Atmos system or any permutation thereof, such as 7.2.2 or 5.1.2. You get the idea. We connected the Pioneer to 3 different sets of home theater speakers. First, the Focal Aria K2s, the new Monitor Audio Silver Series speakers, and finally, the Magnet Cinema Ultra speaker system. For subwoofer duties, I relied on the Klipsch SPL100. As for the rest, we stream music and movies from our Apple TV 4K connected using a single HDMI cable. Same for our PS5 and our Sony X95J LED TV. With everything connected, the next step was running my speakers through the DIRAC room correction procedure using the included microphone as well as a phone or tablet running the Pioneer remote app. Like my experience with the RZ50, the included DIRAC Live software is as easy to use as any room correction software such as Odyssey, YPOW, or even Pioneer's own MCACC. Only the results you get after running DIRAC are far superior. The best part is DIRAC works, always identifying my speakers, setting their levels appropriately, and applying filters to each correctly every single time. The only thing I would point out about DIRAC is that when it's running its initial speaker identification sweep, it's not uncommon for DIRAC to urge you to turn up your subwoofer volume only to force you to turn it down when it's doing the actual measurements. Here's what I do. Little tip. I set my subwoofer's volume to about 12 o'clock or so for the initial sweep. Then I turn it down to about 3 o'clock for the actual measurements. This seems to work well and gives me satisfactory results, so give it a try if you're having difficulties. Moving on to this receiver's video claims. Since there isn't a wealth of 8K content on the market right now, I'm going to have to reserve judgment with respect to whether or not the Pioneer is a true 8K 60 capable device. But I can say without hesitation that it will accept and play a 4K 120 signal in HDR. Call of Duty was buttery smooth in 4K 120. 4K 60 games like Shadow of the Tomb Raider were also no problem for the Pioneer. The only thing you need to make sure you do before attempting to game at higher resolutions and frame rates is to set the HDMI output inside the Pioneer menus from 4K standard to 8K standard or enhanced. Once you do that, your gaming console should output the highest quality signal and send it through to the Pioneer, no problem. Okay, so far so good, but how does it sound? In terms of overall sound quality, the Pioneer, once dialed in and in the direct mode, be it stereo or Atmos, the 305 sounds near as makes no difference, the exact same as the RZ50. In fact, it's not even night and day different from the sound of costlier receivers such as the Yamaha A8A. Honestly, unless you're stepping up to a big boy receiver like the Rotel 1580 Mark II with its Herculean Class AB amplifier, I doubt many would notice much of a performance difference as it relates to the sound quality between the 305 reviewed here and just about anything retailing for under, say, $3,000. Translation, do I think other receivers are night and day better? No. They're just going to do things a little different here or there, which is going to come down to personal taste with respect to what you prefer, but let's break it down. The Pioneer, like the ONKYO, is a receiver with a fuller tone down low. It's not tubby or slow, but it definitely comes across as weightier than a comparable Yamaha or Sony receiver. And I am talking about its bass prowess without a subwoofer. Because once you add a subwoofer or two, all of these receivers' bass performance essentially evens out because it's your subwoofer's extension that will ultimately determine who's the winner in the bass department and not the receiver itself. But when driving a stereo pair of speakers like the Focal or better yet the Monitor Audio Silver Towers, the Pioneer possesses more body down low with good detail throughout. True, the Yamaha A8A showed more finesse in the bass, especially as you near the mid-range, but the Pioneer definitely held its own. Given that the 305 is a third the price, I think a close second to the Yamaha is a win. As for the mid-range, man, the Pioneer is a stunner. The mid-range, be it with music or movies, is very clear. Detail, subtle textures, vocal inflections are all rendered faithfully and with studio-like precision. Truly, there isn't much to pick apart here. Instruments and performers, they sound as they should. The mid-range performance is such that should you pick up on any extra warmth or leanness, it's likely your speakers and not the 305. Moving on to the treble, again, the Pioneer really is something to behold. Listening to the piano stylings of Bill Charlap and Renee Rossness in both stereo as well as Dolby Atmos through the Magnet Cinema Ultra speakers, I'm not sure if it gets that much better, at least not at this price. I would have to step up to either the Deckware Zen, Canner AI 110, or the Macintosh 7200 to achieve appreciable differences in high-end extension and ultimate three-dimensional air, but none of those products can do Atmos, nor have room correction, and so on and so forth. Plus, with the exception of the Zen, they're all 7 times more expensive. So no, the Pioneer's highs aren't as airy as true reference caliber gear. No, they're not quite as three-dimensional as cost-no-object amplifiers, but for an AV receiver around $1,000, I can listen to the Pioneer all day, for its high notes are oh so clear, detailed, and best of all, never fatiguing. When listening in stereo, the Pioneer soundstage is impressive. There is some spatial flattening with respect to depth, but in terms of detail separation and ultimate presence, especially between your left and right speakers, the Pioneer is terrific. Now with movies and more specifically Atmos soundtracks, the Pioneer is up there with the RZ50 and maybe just a step behind the Yamaha A8A with respect to ambient or spatial cues. The Pioneer took full advantage of the magnet upward firing Atmos drivers and used them to arguably greater effect than the Marantz NR1711 or the Denon X3700H. Even upmixing non-Atmos content to faux Atmos was a real treat, and I am including stereo mixes in that statement. The Pioneer surround sound performance is superb. For those of you needing a bit of added vocal intelligibility, the Pioneer, like the ONKYO, makes it easy to dial up or down the dialogue presence using the remote. Something I can't say for every receiver. So whether you're wanting to put together a 3.1.2, 5.2.4, or 7.2.2 home theater setup, the Pioneer can easily fit the bill and be all of the AV receiver many of you will ever need. In terms of power and dynamics, the Pioneer has the grunt to drive most, note I didn't say all, loudspeakers on the market today. For example, I don't think I would use the Pioneer on a pair of Magnepans, but it drove the Focal K2 towers rather well and had zero issues with both the Monitor Audio Silver Series and the Wharfedale Lintons, and it sounded sublime with the magnets. Dynamic swings were broad, rich, and impactful, but with a good amount of detail throughout. So those of you looking for a true cinema-like experience with respect to impact and scale, definitely check out the Pioneer. Now, in terms of drawbacks, there aren't many. Like the ONKYO, the 305 is a fully realized AV receiver today. That said, I wish all 6 HDMI inputs could at least accept a 40 gigabit per second signal rather than half of them being limited to 24. I also found an odd bug with our unit that is worth noting. When listening to Atmos or any surround codec really, and when placing the Pioneer in its auto surround mode, the center speaker will occasionally just cut out. Not sure what that's about. It only happens when selecting auto surround. The second you toggle to any other sound setting, including Dolby Atmos or just direct, the center speaker returns. I have no explanation for why this intermittent issue happens, and I cannot say if it's unique to my unit or if it's a widespread bug, but it's worth mentioning. Aside from that, all of the 305's functionality is fully realized now. It sounds great and doesn't have build quality issues like, feet that just sort of fall off. As for comparisons, should go without saying that whether you're buying a Pioneer, ONKYO, or Integra receiver nowadays, you're going to be treated to similar performance and features. The Pioneer 305 isn't the RZ50's equal in terms of overall features, as the RZ50 has full preamp outs for 11.2 channels, not to mention has a bit more power on tap. That said, if you don't need preamp outs or the added 20 watts per channel, the Pioneer sounds every bit as good as our AV receiver of the year in the ONKYO RZ50. So if you can't wait for the RZ50, I would definitely consider the Pioneer. The two are more than a little comparable, that and you'll save a few $100 by going with the Pioneer over the RZ50. Compared to the Denon X3700H, the Pioneer is every bit as good and nearly as powerful. While the Denon has more by way of connection options and expandability down the road, I prefer the Pioneer because its user experience is more straightforward, and I think DIRAC produces better, more natural results with respect to room correction compared to Odyssey. Nothing against Odyssey, it's great, but I just think DIRAC is a little better, and I love that the Pioneer includes it as standard within the 305. Compared to the Yamaha AVENTAGE series, the 305 falls somewhere between the A4A and the A6A in terms of feature set. I think the Yamaha receivers are a bit more robust in terms of build quality, that is when they're built correctly, and like the RZ50 and 3700H from Denon, both Yamaha receivers have a few more connection options compared to the Pioneer. That said, the Yamaha platform right now is buggy. Their 4K 120 firmware hasn't hit all of their receivers, meaning a lot of higher-end Yamaha receivers are still limited to 4K 60, and YPOW room correction isn't that great compared to DIRAC. So would I pay the more premium price for a Yamaha receiver right now? No. The Pioneer LX305 is a great sounding, capable receiver that isn't going to completely destroy your bank account. Like the RZ50, it punches well above its weight class, and in so doing, reaffirms my opinion that the law of diminishing returns among AV receivers continues to hover somewhere around $1,500 or less. But maybe the best thing about the 305, at least as of this review, is the fact that you can actually get your hands on one. So would I recommend the Pioneer LX305? Absolutely. So that's it. That is now my review of the Pioneer Elite LX305, but now it's time to find out what Kristi thought of it.
Oh, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah?
The end.
That's it?
I mean, yeah, kind of. No, seriously, I can't think of one reason why this isn't something that would fit into most people's systems. Mm-hmm. For me, it was virtually indistinguishable to the RZ50, and much like the Marantz NR1711, again, for me, I'm not sure why I would spend more money on something else.
Okay. Yeah, I was pretty impressed. I was pretty impressed with the performance. And I think once you kind of compare the two together and you realize that the RZ50 is better because it has a few more options in terms of like preamp outputs for those of you that may want to play with amplifiers down the road. for other channels. That really is kind of the difference, the bigger difference, if you will, because in terms of just day-to-day livability and functionality, once you set them up with an HDMI component and use CEC and whatnot, this thing's really going to kind of turn itself on. If you leave it in direct mode, it's going to pick the right sound format based on the signal coming in, and Bob's your uncle.
It's easy, and it's built well. So I didn't have any issues with it. I thought it sounded really good. I thought it sounded fantastic with the magnet speakers. But man, spoiler alert, those things were freaking good. I have nothing else to add.
Just works.
We can wrap it up.
All right. Well, that is now our review of the Pioneer Elite LX305. I was expecting more, but I guess slam dunk Pioneer, you made a receiver that we both like equally. So now it's time for you guys to tell us what you guys think. Let us know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, I've got a question of the day for you, and that is this. Who makes the best AV receiver right now? Not who makes the best receiver going back 20 years. No. Who makes the best receiver right now? Let us know down in the comments below. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and go ahead and ring that bell so that you're notified when new videos come out. If you use any of the links that Kristi left for you down below, and there's always more than a few, know that that is a great way that you have continued to show your support for this channel and the work that we do here, and both of us thank you very much for doing that. Also, we would like to thank Omaze once again for sponsoring this video. Go ahead and check out the link below. Enter for your chance to win these great prizes and also help out charity. So omaze.com/Andrew Robinson. Follow me on Instagram at Recovering Audiophile, and that is it for us today. So remember, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next video. Bye.